Welcome back. Hope you all had a very happy holiday and a Merry Christmas if you celebrate that. Before we get into today's video for going over the things that I think you should be selling right now in today's market, I got to give a quick shout out to every single one of you who has been supporting me the last couple weeks when I started making videos. We pretty much doubled the channel's growth in the last week due to these last two videos performing so well. So thank you guys so much for the support. It really means a lot. I just wanted to give you all a shout out for being so supportive and leaving me lots of feedback, good or bad feedback, always welcome. Before we get too deep into it, I do want to put in a quick caveat, which is that I mainly deal in modern cards, from sort of that, I would say, Sun and Moon onwards for the most part, sort of more familiar with the prices on those and sort of paying attention to that movement. I don't pay as much attention to vintage cards. I know some of them have seen some spikes and movements recently. I'm not going to speak to them. If it were me, I would probably move a lot of my vintage into modern, or at least some of my position be diversified in my portfolio in terms of what kind of cards I'm buying and selling. But that's just me. If you love vintage, by all means, keep collecting it. If you love modern, this may be a little bit more applicable to you. The first couple are pretty obvious. This is just due to the impending possible reprints in 2025. Again, nothing is confirmed yet, but I could say with a higher degree of confidence, I want to say that Surging Sparks is one of the more likely sets to get a reprint. I actually am not as inclined to want to sell the Pikachu and the Latios as some of the other cards. I think the pull rates are still pretty difficult from this set, so I don't see these ones dropping too much when reprints come. But again, it's kind of up to you. A lot of what I'm going to go through really just depends on the price that you bought in at and what your goals are and where that money is actually going to be transferred to. If you have no plan in mind and you just are trying to take money off the table, I would say that the advice I'm going to give is maybe not as relevant to you. You sort of have to make that decision at your own discretion, but I will say there are some cards in this set that I definitely would probably look to be moving. I would say this gold Pikachu is one of them. This card is up 254% in the last 3 months and still another 30% in the last month. I don't think it's natural. We've pretty much seen almost no gold cards perform like this in the past. They pretty much all have gone down in value over time. Now, maybe this is because it's Pikachu, or maybe this is the new, meta moving forward in future sets. But I am just of the belief that historically, gold cards have not performed well over time. And so I'm going to move on the side of caution with this card as well. Also, it's just moved in price so much that I would be a little bit nervous to think that it could go much higher. But again, it's continued to surprise me. So maybe that's not a well-informed answer. But also, to the credit of the gold cards, I believe they are harder to pull than SIRs. So the pull rate, it does have that going for it. Some of the other cards in Surging I would probably be looking to move are the Hydreigon, honestly, and the Alolan Executor. Not that they aren't great arts, it's just at $85 and $75 respectively. I think these are cards that would be more likely to drop a little bit with an impending reprint. The booster box, which I have one right here actually for the video. The booster box and the cases are pretty much 1.5 to double the price you could get them at before, 2 or 3 months before release when people were taking pre-orders. So obviously that set has skyrocketed a lot. To me, I'm personally not selling any of mine. Maybe one box, but I have a couple cases that I'm sitting on because I do think that once the reprint comes, it's going to get gobbled up quite quickly. Again, maybe they do a massive reprint, so that might put the prices down a lot. But I bought in so cheap on Surging. I got them for like under 600 a case. It doesn't really make sense for me to sell any unless I have a better place for that money. And so far, this has been the best performing Scarlet and Violet era set so far. So I don't really see where I could be putting my money to better use in the Scarlet and Violet era, at least. So for now, I'm going to sit on them. Again, that's maybe a little bit contradictory to what I was just saying, but I do think that some of the singles I would probably be capitalizing on. And if I bought a bunch of boxes, say above 150-ish probably, or cases above like, I don't know, 900, I probably would be selling off some of those before that sort of February timeframe where everyone is expecting a reprint. And again, you don't have to liquidate everything. You can sell some of it, keep some of it. see where the price goes after the reprint. The same kind of goes for Twilight. I don't actually think the singles, I don't know. I feel like the singles are already pretty priced in terms of like, besides the Greninja maybe and the Eevee, I feel like it's not too ridiculous of prices. And I don't think Pokemon would give this set as big of a reprint, but again, I could be wrong. I do think though that the cases and possibly even the boxes, again, depending on your price point that you bought in at, it might make sense to take some money off the table for these sets. I think the same can pretty much be said for 151. Again, this set is so dang popular that no matter how many reprints Pokemon has done for it or restocks of certain products, it just continues to go higher and higher and higher. I don't know how. I mean, I do know how, but I guess my point is no matter how much they're printing, it is met with higher and higher price points after that supply hits the market. So I guess I'm bringing this one up just to say the Blooming Waters, I don't know what the allocations and or number of them to be released is, but if it's anything like the Sea and Sky boxes from Crown Zenith, it will absolutely go toe-to-toe with the demand for a while, I think. Again, that's just my opinion, but some of these cards have seen ridiculous growth. It may be worth getting rid of some of the cards, taking your money off the table. I probably wouldn't sell any of the PC ETBs. Personally, I do think those, and probably the UPCs as well. I don't think those would get reprints, but definitely not the PC ETBs. Okay, moving on. A lot of people saw this, but I'm sure a decent amount of people didn't notice it. There are a few cards that have seen some pretty dramatic price increases recently, one of which is the Miriam from Scarlet and Violet base set. Then just the last month, it's up almost double. So the video I put out about a week ago, I was saying I liked this card at the $26, $27 price range, thinking that, it could go up maybe in the next 3 to 6 months. And it pretty much doubled within the past week. So it went from $26 to $41. Now, I want to bring this to everyone's attention and why I might, if it were me, and I do have 2 copies of this, I think, in a PSA 10, why it might make sense to sell some of these. Again, I do think this card will do great long term, but just in this immediate short term, if you look at the actual like sold listings, it was selling about less than 10 a day. You saw 12 here, but pretty much less than 10 of these a day. And then between the 20th and the 21st, we see 83 items sold. To me, that screams a little bit of buyout / manipulation. I'm not someone who usually dwells on that stuff, but this card seemed like an obvious example of it. Versus, let's look at another card. That's the chase card from Scarlet Violet base, the Gardevoir SIR. You can see this chart actually looks a little bit more natural. It's up 25% in the month, but if you look at the sold items, you'll see some variation in the data there, but it doesn't have as dramatic of a sharp increase here. And the actual sold listings is pretty consistent throughout. So I guess I'm bringing that up just to say that's also an indicator you can use for looking for things that you want to sell, is kind of how dramatically they've increased in a short amount of time. Now, this one may be an unpopular choice, but I know I mentioned in my last video there are some great buys in Crown Zenith. I will just quickly mention that the Giratina V-Star, which is the main chase, has seen some ridiculous price increases recently. Again, similar to the Miriam, it shot up from about 110-ish to it's at 180 now in the last month. My point in bringing it up is just, again, how drastically it's moved in such a short amount of time. This is a card that's going to do great long term. I'm 100% sure of it. And it could continue to run. I'm just saying, again, if I had multiple copies that I got in the 90s or low 100s, that I honestly probably will sell at least 1 or 2 of them, just because it's almost doubled in price. And it's not always about selling when things double. I guess my point is I would rather use that $100 chunk of profit to reinvest into a different single or a different set of singles or slabs that I personally think can move. But take this one with a grain of salt. I know a lot of people are after it. I know it's remained consistently popular. I don't have any doubt that it will continue to go up. I mean, you can even see sales in the 200s now. So, I I don't know. I just think it's one of those things where you, again, have to gauge when you bought in. If you bought in at 150, maybe it doesn't make sense to sell right now. But if you got this in the low 100s or 90s like I did, you're not really your risk for selling right now, or I guess the money that you're missing out on feels a lot less like harmful to the portfolio to take this one off the table. Personally, I'm not, if this card goes to 250 or 300, I'm not going to cry about it because I already made $100 profit. It's already 100% up on what I paid for it. So it's not a huge miss by any means. Like that's the thing too. Like you have to see this stuff sort of relative to, again, what your other goals are, but also like just because something continues to go up doesn't mean that you missed out. Like you made money on this. So obviously you could have made more money and maybe it outperformed some of the other things you invested in. It's kind of trial and error sometimes, but also you're trying to make calculated plays. And for me, this one, it's not a screaming sell, but it's sort of like on the borderline where I'm like, it's continuing to go up at a rate where I'm like, all right, I might take one or two of these off the table and move it into something else. Another one that's been on an absolute tear recently is the Gengar VMAX alt art. This one was starting to push and cross as being the second most expensive alt art after the Umbreon VMAX, and that is in part due to the Fusion Strike booster box pushing between around 350, 360 now. And this card obviously has not seen sort of a, in my opinion, a manipulated increase. It just has a few selling here and there, and there's just not enough on the market. This card just moves when it needs to move. You know, a lot of these stores only have one. You have enough of them sell in a short enough amount of time. You have the set going up to where, you know, the price seems justified. Again, my point is just to say, depending on where you bought these at, it might make sense to take money off the table. I had multiple of these copies, and I just want to show you guys the receipts. This was what I had bought, I think in October. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4 PSA 10 Gengar VMAXs, around between 540 and 600 each. Let's look at them now. Again, I don't have all these now. I sold them around 800 or 900, so I'm eating my own words with this. But I guess my point is, again, where you bought in at is very important. These are going for $1,100 now. So had I just held them, would have even made more. And then some of those raw copies I was getting at like 285 or 300. Now they've doubled in price. I have 2 of them at PSA right now. So depending on when they get back and what grade they get, I may sell 1 or 2 of them. That's the other principle I would think about is if you had multiple copies of these, you don't necessarily need to sell them all at 1,000 each, because if it goes to 1,500 someday and you wanted to make that sort of play, you would be able to. But, you know, selling 1 or 2 here or there or trickling them out as they go up is not a bad play in my opinion. I did the same thing with the Giratina, getting the PSA 10 around 600 and the raws around 300 each, I think, or 305. And those have pretty much doubled in price as well. Again, I have a few of them at PSA right now. The 10 I have since moved, but my point in bringing this one up is just to say it might make sense to take some money off the table for some of these cards that have seen massive price spikes. It's not to say that they won't continue to go up over time, because I'm sure they will. You know, at some point, the money's got to flow somewhere. Right now, it's flowing back to Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon. And the last one I'll quickly touch on, because I have a box right here, which I'm thinking about selling, is certain Sun and Moon XY booster boxes. There's another one. Burning Shadows. Just to show you I got the receipts, you know? But for me, it's almost getting to the point where I want to liquidate a few of these loose booster boxes I have for a few reasons. The main one being that I got them, again, only a few months ago, but at such lower prices than they are now. I got that Burning Shadows box, I think at like less than 350 or around 350 a couple months ago in a bigger lot. And the Lost Thunder box I got for 600, I think. So it's only at like 750. There's a recent sale. So if it pushes towards 800, I might just get rid of it, because I don't really even know why I picked it up, other than I felt like I was underexposed to Sun and Moon and XY boxes. But now that they've had their dramatic increases, you know, Burning Shadows I think is close to $500. It's sort of to the point where they've kind of done what I wanted them to do. Again, it's really my price that I bought in at. You know, if you look 3 months ago, it was still selling for 650 or whatever, and there's only one on the market. So it probably isn't in my best interest to just get rid of all these. But I have a few more Sun and Moon and kind of the worser XY boxes. I'm thinking about getting rid of 1 or 2 of them just so that I can make some more plays in singles and slabs that I'm after. I also vend on the side, so it would help with that side of things a little bit more. The idea is that it really depends on what you bought in at, what your goals are in the hobby in the short, medium, long term, which again, you don't maybe have to have all of that figured out, but just a rough idea. Don't just be buying and selling things just because you feel the urge to do that. There should be sort of a reason behind what you're doing most of the time. So I hope this video helped. Let me know what you thought of some of the topics I brought up. Were they good? Were they bad? Where can I improve? Thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe down below. And other than that, I will catch you all in the next video. Peace.